Good afternoon, everybody. This is Stacy Niblo. Thanks for joining me for our Gale Discus webinar. I am your Gale trainer for South Carolina. Glad to be with you all virtually today to take a look at Kids InfoBits. Kids InfoBits is a database for our elementary age users. So we're going to, sorry folks, had trouble advancing my slide there. We're going to be taking a look at what it's made of, how to find what you need, and just some best practices for putting it to use in the library. Along the way, I'm happy to take questions. If you see something on the screen you want to know more about or you want me to search, feel free to let me know using the chat or the Q&A. So we're going to start out with just a quick reminder about what's in Kids InfoBits, what you can expect to find here. So again, we built it for elementary age kids, so we look at a school curriculum and try to match that up, but then also with things that elementary age kids may be interested in just for their own learning. And as you can imagine, very popular with animal research. So I've got a screenshot there for some octopuses. But it is a wide-ranging database. You've got, content there for geography, for science, for ELA, and so on. So it's a nice little one-stop shopping for elementary age kids, again, because of the curriculum alignment, but also just because of, what they may be interested in learning more about. In Kids InfoBits, we have a variety of types of sources. So book content, nonfiction type stuff that you might find on the shelves in the children's library for reference, but also just, general nonfiction, circulating nonfiction type things. Magazines, of course, aimed at that age range, and images and videos. And then there's some news content as well. We pull from some newswire sources. Our advisory board for Kids InfoBits said that it wouldn't be a good idea to have a database for kids without newspapers. So rather than throwing a bunch of newspapers in there, we include a few newswires for current news content as well. So we'd love to have a kids newspaper, but unfortunately that's not available, so we go with a few newswires. So again, a nice little one-stop shopping type tool, so great for when students have reports, or maybe if you've got a book club at the public library and you want to learn more about octopuses because there's an octopus in the book you're using, that type of thing. You've got a reliable resource for research for elementary kids in that kind of reading level. So let's go ahead and dive in and take a look at it. Now, I am going to be live in the, questions and answers can come throughout. Sorry, let me actually get out the database. Now, I am going to visit the resources through Discus's website, so this probably looks pretty familiar to you. You can find Kids InfoBits a few different ways. I tend to go in by grade level. Take a look here at early childhood and elementary, and we'll find Kids InfoBits in the list here. Let me go ahead and use my annotate tool and circle it here. There's Kids InfoBits. And I'm actually already logged in, so I'll just click over to it. But Kids InfoBits homepage, like many of our databases, wants to give you a path into the content via a search. So you can just dive right in when you know what you're looking for, or via our topic trees. This is kind of our browsable way into the content. It's a great tool when students maybe have a choice in what they're doing a report on, or they just want to have a little look around. What we do with the topic trees is you choose your topic, this broad subject area, from this broad subject area like geography. And we want to help build information literacy skills in kids, so we also take the broad topic and narrow it down. So, this is how information is organized. You make it into smaller pieces. So with geography, we have to choose, say, countries or U.S. states, mountains, islands, these different kind of pieces of geography. And then once you choose, you get matched up with a list, and there's a handy pronunciation tool here for all the countries, and really any of the lists that you come across like this will have the pronunciation tool. Unfortunately, you won't be able to hear it on your end of the webinar. It only plays on my end, so I'll have you trust me that it works well. But we have our choice of countries here. And then once you select, go with, say, New Zealand, I would love to visit someday, we come to a results screen and divide up the content the way you might in the library, books together, magazines together, images, and so on, and can go off from here. The search tool is going to actually end up in the same type of place. If you enter a search, just use New Zealand again so you can see what happens. You end up at the same place. So whether you come in via the topic tree or the search, you're going to end up at a familiar looking result. And the pages all share the same, the searches all share the same type of search result. So again, now with this search on water cycle, I have books, I have pictures, and so on. So, familiar, no matter how you get to the content, you get this familiar looking search result with integrated results. So with Kids InfoBits, again, we aim for an elementary aged student here, both again in terms of content, but also reading level. And that's a wide range. Certainly a kindergartner is at a different reading level than, say, a fifth grader. So one of the tools you can use to decide which of these, say, articles on the water cycle I want to point my, say, second grader to that I'm working with is our content level indicator. Okay. We also get a word count, which can be helpful. But I think the content level indicator is a better tool. Gives us a little more information. So let me explain what that information is. We have a key here, and you'll see the green circle is basic, yellow square is intermediate. You won't really see advanced much in Kids InfoBits, if at all. We mainly save it for publications that are there maybe for the librarian, the teacher, but there really aren't many of those in Kids InfoBits anymore. So these three content levels exist in our other databases as well, so we always show the same key here. But what it means is something different depending on which database you're in. When you're in Kids InfoBits, it's adapted for elementary age students. So basic is going to be maybe grades K through 2, and intermediate is going to be grades 3 through 5. So it adjusts as you move up in our databases to articles with an older audience. You'll see that that kind of ages with it. The basic is always going to be the lower end of the scale. Intermediate is going to be, in the case of Kids InfoBits, kind of the high end of the scale because we don't really have much advanced, but and the other database is more middle. And then advanced would be the high level. And we call it a content level rather than a reading level for two reasons. One, we take some other things into account when assigning that content level. Not just the reading level of the content, but kind of the research level. So how deep does the article go? The other reason, though, is we don't want kids to kind of be called out on a particular reading level. If we were to call it a reading level, they might ask, what's this? And if I'm working with a fourth grader and I'm putting them into a basic article, that might, feel a little odd to them. We don't want them to have any shame associated with using, say, a basic content level. So we don't have really any sort of definition within the database of these reading levels. You have to find them through really our website. So we don't want kids kind of stumbling across them. But this is a good tool for you, for teachers, for even parents. When you're looking at the articles, that basic's going to be a little simpler. Intermediate's going to be a little more advanced. So we can jump in. We do like to balance. So often you will see, I'm sure we would have had for New Zealand as well if we'd kind of looked at all the book results, a good balance of articles between basic and intermediate. So we try to have that differentiation available. So let's pop into the basic one here. And in Kids InfoBits, you kind of automatically get a larger font size. I think I've made mine a little bit bigger for your end of the conference, so it's clearer, but just naturally it has a bigger font than our other databases. But you can see we start out with the main ideas on the water cycle, and then, short sentences, short paragraphs. Sorry, folks, I feel a sneeze coming on, so bear with me. Short sentences, short paragraphs to get the information they may need, and then the citation should they need it. So lots of good stuff here. We also have images in the database, and you'll see some, for example, come from the articles we look at as well. So if the kids just jump right to the images, we can see that's something we've seen. We've got this labeled illustration of the water cycle, so a great way to kind of visually confirm what it is. But the reason I love this water cycle search is we also have an unlabeled version of that illustration. So our databases are a lot of, text and images and the like, and it often is more about reading and research when you're in them. So I love to point out these tools that can be turned into an activity. So there are a few in Kids InfoBits that I'll point out, but these unlabeled illustrations, this is a great tool. I could turn this into an activity worksheet for my students, and certainly I can copy and paste it, but we added a couple years ago the ability to export the content you find in our databases out to Google Drive and Microsoft's OneDrive. And what this will do is then make it available to me in the cloud, where it's basically my document now. So if I choose to take this out to Google Drive, I'll just go ahead and choose my one of my Google accounts here. It's sent it off. I get a little confirmation. Let's go ahead and visit. Oh, let me get to the right Drive account. Sorry, I have a few. Get into the right one. So what we do when you take something from one of the databases and download it, I shouldn't say take, that makes it sound wrong. When you move something from the database over to your Google Drive or Microsoft OneDrive, we create a folder named for the database you're using. And we did that because we don't want to just throw a bunch of documents up on your main Google Drive. Then we take that article and turn it into a Google Doc. Or if this were Microsoft OneDrive, it would be a Microsoft Word online document. So here it is. And it's all editable. There's no digital rights management here. I can, with a few, clicks, turn this into an activity sheet. I even have instructions here, the caption that comes along with the image could be the questions for my students. Maybe I'll make that a little bigger. I probably don't need that, or I definitely do not need that Gale document number. Only we recognize it at Gale. The source citation, I can't quite bring myself to delete that, but I'm going to make it a lot smaller. So there we go. So we know where we found it. And in less than a minute, I have this activity I can give to my students, or again, if I'm doing this in the public library, something to do during, our reading hour or something, we're good to go. And this will live in my Google Drive now. I can do with it what I like. You have all the same Google tools you can share. You can, whoops, where's my highlight tool? There we go. You can share the content. As you can see, you can edit it like I did. And because it's in the cloud, it's available to me anywhere, anytime. So, very handy feature. And in all of the databases you get from Gale and Discus. So, standard feature we have. I do want to show you a few other tools, so I'm going to jump back out to our results. And I want to do this, actually I'll go into that water cycle article that we have. So we have the same image, but in this case you can see the paragraphs are a little longer here in this article for our, say third through fifth graders. It's longer. We saw that by the word count. Okay. But let me share a couple tools. So within every article, we have, of course, the Google and OneDrive. You can also print, email, download other ways. Those are all really handy. But to expand the reach of the resource, I always like to point out a couple tools. Our Listen, which is our text-to-speech feature, and our Translate article tool. Now, again, I'm going to go ahead and click Listen here. You won't be able to hear it on your end of the conference, but I want you to see what it does. So it's highlighting the text as it's reading. So it's a great way for students to be able to follow along. I apologize if I'm speaking louder because I'm getting the sound through my headset, so you can see it working there. Now, it is an automated reader, so sometimes you hear something a little funny. For example, I'm not sure if this one would have any, but if it's a year, say it's 1981, it might say 1981, but those types of things. It handles pronunciation really well. But what I always like to highlight in this feature is once you click play on the player, you'll see the player opens up and expands, and there's a settings icon here. And if you click on it, it gives you all these options for how the player works. You can actually disable that highlighting if you don't like it. You can make some adjustments for red-green color blindness here with the highlight that goes through. But my favorite tools here actually come beneath that: enhanced text visibility and reading speed. So reading speed is probably pretty self-explanatory. It'll slow it down. Enhanced text visibility, I'm going to turn that on and then immediately go back and play so you can see what it does. It's going to pop out the text, there we go, at the bottom of the screen. It's still highlighting, so it's easy to follow along with. And now I get a better look at the text. And I'm not sure if you can tell from the way the highlighter is moving, but it is going slower. So this is a really great feature for, of course, any students you may have who have vision issues. This makes the text a little bigger, or if they have no vision, of course, they can listen along. This database will also, of course, comply with a screen reader. But what I like about this is it gets right to the document. It doesn't read, a bunch of the other links on the page. It gets right to reading the article. So very handy. The other great thing is, let me go ahead and close that, or no, let me leave it open. I think this is great for students where maybe English isn't their first language and they're, picking it up. This will help with that. They can see it and hear it at the same time with, again, does really great pronunciation. However, if you've got students who are, I'm just going to close that up and move over to the Translate tool, who are really struggling with English, and I shouldn't always say students, sometimes it's going to be, kids wanting to use the database. You've got over 40 languages to pick from here to translate the article into. Now, it is a machine translation, so you get those kind of oddities that come with a machine translation. But if this is someone's native language, they're going to have an easier time with those. So if someone's really struggling with English, you have several languages to pick from there. And if I scroll back up to here, the other reason I closed out the player is because it will now read it in Spanish. So for about half of the languages in that drop box, you'll actually get the audio translation as well. So great feature to reach more users. And again, we're doing this in Kids InfoBits, but really all of these features are available in the Gale databases that you get from Discus. So you're able to take advantage of them there too. Another way we want to meet users' learning styles is with video content. We've pumped up the video content in Kids InfoBits over the last couple of years. The videos we get come from a company called Visual Learning Systems, who produce specifically for different age levels, mostly in the STEM content area. And so here we have Water, Water Everywhere. They're generally anywhere from about 2 to 5 minutes long, so they're a great introduction to a topic or break down something simple like the water cycle here. So again, that's how folks like to learn. I'd much rather read an article, but my niece, who's in college now, she'd much rather watch a 2-minute video clip to pick up some information. So it's really all about your learning style and what you prefer. So the videos are great sources. You'll also find magazines. So we've got some articles about the water cycle. Now, the other reason I do this water cycle search is specifically to kind of point out the dates here. Kids InfoBits is a database we update daily. We put in new magazine articles every day. But something to keep in mind is if you think about the range of publications for kids, they aren't published with the same speed that other publications are. So kids magazines are often 4 times a year or maybe every other month. So new content isn't available as quickly as in our other databases. It's also, the other thing to keep in mind with our databases is we have deep back files for this content. So, these might look a little dated, but not really much has changed with the water cycle, So, well, certainly if we get into environmental issues, we might go down another path. But the way the water cycle works, hasn't really changed. So although these might look a little dated, it's just kind of the nature of kids publishing. If we were to search on something, much more current, that's maybe in the news, we'd have a different looking result set here. So something to keep in mind I like to mention because sometimes we get a little feedback on the dates here. So now if you liked those unlabeled illustrations, you can actually find them all in the database. If you actually search by unlabeled illustrations, you'll find them all. So we've got about 40, or actually no, let me get rid of that S. Did that? I feel like there are more, but maybe that's the correct number. Oh, nope, it is 46. Okay, just wanted to double check. So there we have, we've got the lungs, the heart, lots of science-related content here. So we have, and these will come up, of course, if I search on a snail, I'm going to get this unlabeled illustration as well. So you can find them pretty easily. The other thing I always like to show off, one of the other, I think, kind of fun things about kids' publications is many of them are, really encourage kids to write in and share a poem or a short story or a drawing and things like that. You can actually find them in the databases. So let's go ahead. I live in Buffalo, New York, and our winter is going to last a little longer than I imagine yours is, but we'll go ahead and follow a path. So certainly, we can do research into the seasons and the like, but if we go down and take a look at the magazine results, one of the things I always like to show off is when you come into an entry, and you can see here we've got some more recent dates for this topic. When you come into your magazine results or your news, it can often be a fairly high number depending on what your search is for your number of results, so 913. There are a few ways we can narrow this down, and that's all over here in the right-hand sidebar. So one, I could limit to content level, which may be something I do pretty often. But one I always like to show is if I open up the subjects here, I can choose winter, winter Olympics, winter sports. I can get a little more specific, or even just make sure I'm using the right subject heading. So 165 out of those 900 articles are really about winter. And there we go. Right. And then you may have noticed under subjects we have poetry by children as a subject heading, or children's poetry. I could use those. Or what I like to do is actually use document type, because they're there as well. Document type can be really handy. Poem, of course, or even play. Cover story is a good one because you're going to get a fairly, in-depth article. The document type, I think, is kind of a neat way to narrow down results. So let's go ahead and find some poems. And there we go. And you just click in. There's our poem from Cheyenne, maybe, Edwards Holton in Indiana. So kind of fun. And you can seek this content out by using the path I did, or if you go to advanced search. Now, advanced search isn't often used by kids, but it is a great tool to kind of get where you want to go quickly. I think it's more for library staff and teachers and parents. And we can use those limiters here, things like content level, content type, if I want, say, just magazine hits or news or something, or video. But I'm going to go ahead and use document type here. Let's go ahead and find a play. So, whoops, too far. Oh, goodness. Sorry, I'm clumsy with my mouse today. There we go. So I can select play, and then up above, I'm going to tie it together with what I want my play to be about. So say civil rights. And you choose where I want to search for civil rights. So is it a keyword, it's kind of a hot spot in the article? Is it a subject? That probably is more precise. I'm going to start with that. If I don't find anything, I might come back and use keyword. So make it a subject heading, and there we go. Looks like we've got a poem, or excuse me, a play about Rosa Parks. So something we could do in the classroom or do a read aloud during story hour. But kind of neat content. Of course, we're going to have lots of animal overviews, and as we saw, country and state overviews and things like that. All those kind of, report type tools you might need. But I like to point out these things that can be a little more interactive too. So very handy. Now, if I want to lead my students to this, say we are going to read this play during class. Certainly I can print it out. Feel free to do that. You've got the print option there. We print out a printer-friendly version of the play in this case. You can, certainly feel free to make copies and share it with students. And what I love about this one is actually you can see at the end, it's got kind of a quiz to go along with it. So you can really make it part of a lesson plan. So certainly you can print it out, but you've also got the option to share it with your students a couple different ways. One is to use our bookmark tool. So the bookmark is a persistent URL or PURL that you just copy and paste wherever you normally would put a link. So if I've got a website I use with my students, or maybe we use something like Canvas or Schoology or Schoology or something like that, you just take that URL, paste it wherever you would in those tools. If I've got a website, I can put it there. If I want to tweet it or Facebook it, I can do that. Again, wherever a URL would go. And what's neat about it is this URL, one, is reliable, which may not sound that unique. A lot of URLs are, but this will always bring you back to the same place. You'll always get back to the same article. It'll still be here. The other thing it does, though, is it jumps over authentication. So if you normally have to put in a password or a library card number or something to get into the databases, you won't have to do that with the bookmark URL. You won't get access to the rest of the database, but you will get to what you link to. So it's a great way to draw users into content and put them right where you want them, that URL. And you'll see it on most pages. That bookmark is always up in the banner. If it's not available, it'll just be kind of grayed out so you can't click on it. But that doesn't happen very often. It's available on almost every page. So it's a great way to draw users in. We also have the ability, if anyone of you are with a school that's a G Suite for Education school, you may have recognized this icon up in the banner, little green head and shoulders there. That is our Share to Classroom tool, and it will actually let me share this to my Google Classroom page if I've got one. So very simple, uses the same path that the Google Classroom normally does. It just kind of gets it going for you. So great way to put content into people's hands. We even have our own share button, so you can share on social media. Again, just kind of to get the ball rolling. If I want to tweet this play, I could do that. So maybe for Women's History Month, I want to promote, Rosa Parks and the role she played in our history. You can share this right to, say, your the library's Facebook page, or tweet it, and it's going to draw folks into the databases. So lots of ways you can do that. Certainly we could have done this for Black History Month as well in February. Next month we've got National Poetry Month, and I think Hispanic Heritage is coming up as well. So there are lots of ways to celebrate those kind of monthly events with content in the databases. And the great thing is you're drawing them into these tools, and the more use they get, the more likely that Discus will be able to keep them. So great way to kind of raise usage in your databases too. So that is a look at Kids InfoBits. We wanted to provide excuse me, these refresher sessions in case it's a resource you haven't used very much, or maybe you're new to the library, and just give you a little overview, share some best practices, and about when you want to use it. So I haven't got anything in the chat or the Q&A, except that thank you. You're welcome, Heather. Thank you. So feel free to share anything. I'm going to be sending you a follow-up email with our contact info. So don't worry about writing this down. It's all going to be in my email. But this is where you can go after today. We've got lots of great tools at our support site. You can feel free to reach out to me or your customer success manager. That's a good person to be aware of at Gale. They are the person who basically is going to help you be successful with these databases, how to promote them, how to read your usage reports, technical issues, things like that. So you can feel free to reach out to your CSM. If you visit our support site, you'll find the CSM for your, well, you all are from South Carolina, so you'll find the one for your state, but also your library type. So if you're in a K-12 library, you'll work with Tim Hamlin. If you're in a public library, there's someone else who specializes in public libraries. So they all know their library type, so they can help with, the challenges you may face. So definitely reach out as you have questions. We don't want you to suffer in silence. So I'm going to stick around and keep the webinar open in case there are any other questions I can answer. But if you're all set, thanks for tuning in today. Have a great rest of your Monday and a great rest of the week. Thanks, everybody.